Hi everyone, welcome to the what is it? It's a Saturday show talking point crossover. Myself and Stevie Clifford. We are here in our usual spot. We've got Stevie in here. I would ask you how you are, Stevie, but I'm not gonna do you the indignity of having to reply to that after this past week. We're gonna speak about that game against Hearts on Monday a little bit, but have a bit of a broader conversation about Rangers and big games. There's a huge one tomorrow. Rangers can't win the league title, but for a lot of reasons, a really seismic game for Danny Rohl. Stevie, general thoughts to open with? Well, apart from the obvious.
Despondency, I think, is the best thing. I think the worst thing that happened for Danny Rohl is he took us so close.
Yeah.
Only to literally blow it, which I think for the fan base is just unforgivable. The manner in which we've done it, again, unforgivable. There's too many question marks surrounding a lot of issues, which is difficult for the fan base to accept as well. Personally, I'm just so despondent that we're here again.
The cycle, we were just saying this off camera, weren't we?
It's so soul destroying where you get to this point in the season, you're asking the same age-old question of how do you fix this? Do we have to make a change now? If we don't make a change now, what happens come October when we will have to make a change? You know, everybody celebrates Halloween. Rangers fans celebrate a new manager, and it's getting quite boring and very tiresome. And then there's a wider aspect of this takeover. How well has it actually went this year? Do you have the right people in situ, etc., etc.? And we all know that it's guided by what happens in the park. Because if we're top of the league going into the last 3 games, then you know there's not a wide scope. There's not this pressure on everywhere. But as you and I know, when they're not winning and when they're doing what they're doing, it's open season on everyone, and everybody's furious.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really died down. I'm not looking forward to tomorrow. I can't pretend because I don't trust this team. How can you? And I think that's something we'll discuss. And it's just despondent is the easiest way to describe it. It has to end.
Yeah.
And we said it last summer. We said it the summer before. We said it the summer before.
That's how you end it, because
and it's just
How do you end it? Because you're right. Like the worst, I wrote the day after Peace from Tynecastle was the worst opportunity is a missed one, and that's what is so painful about this for Rangers is you look at the comparison of money that Hearts have spent to Rangers, and you look at the open warfare that Celtic have had between boardroom and support all season, and yet it's Rangers who've dropped out first. And assigning blame is tricky in a way because it goes around so many people and it's such a deep-rooted issue. But equally, losing the first 2 games of the split, when you think of what Ibrox was like before that Motherwell game, the potential of it, that's why I think the missed opportunity stings so much. Why don't we start on tomorrow? We're going to get into Danny Rohl's big game record, Stevie, because that's been a big talking point this week, especially after the defeat to Hearts. I think this game tomorrow is seismic, even though Rangers can't win the league. And I'll tell you why. Champions League, the potential to still qualify in the early knockout rounds from finishing second, the potential to dent Celtic's own title hopes, but also the fact that you kind of need some sort of statement win going in. The potential this season really petering out isn't even the right phrase. It doesn't do it justice. He needs something tomorrow, doesn't he? He needs something to hold on to.
Yeah, he does. Let's put aside what it means to the actual club and to what it means to the team. We've got a fan base that are teetering on the brink with Danny Rohl, let's be honest. There is a seismic backlash on social media against Danny Rohl. The fans in the away end against Danny Rohl. It wouldn't be wrong to suggest that a bad result tomorrow and a bad performance would be the end for Danny Rohl in the eyes of many. What the club do is a different conversation. The issue that we have in this room is that we're here again, and you and I both know that once a fan base makes up its mind, and a Rangers one in particular, it is almost impossible to change it.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen it once in management at Rangers, and it was Alex McLeish. And he, by the way, he had the luxury of a double and a treble behind him, and they still wanted him out. and he managed to turn it around. Danny Rohl doesn't have that. And not only that, he doesn't have a lot to fall back on at all.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest issue that we have going into tomorrow's game, that it's not only what it means for the football club. Obviously, Hearts play Motherwell tonight, and as sad as it is, we're hoping that Hearts go and win that game, because we don't want to be staring down the barrel of 5 in a row for Celtic, and particularly you wonder that by their own admission, they've been particularly weak this year, and they've had a kind of disastrous appointment and everything of their own. If they were still to come out with a double this year, at what point do you go, how can you win this? So there's a lot riding on tomorrow for the football club in terms of stopping them and trying to stopping Celtic and trying to win a Champions League spot. But for Danny Rohl, I don't think it's out the realms of possibility to say that this is make or break, win or bust for him in the eyes of many.
Yeah, because the issue that we talk about the cycle, and the issue that you have with the cycle is the manager, by the time they get to the pre-season and really morphing their squad and starting afresh, there's too many scars from before. The obvious comparison is Philippe Clement, where starts so well, gets into the title race, drops out a little bit quicker. But by the time you get round to the summer, the momentum that was there at the start of his tenureship is not there. And we're going to get into some of the reasons surrounding this throughout the podcast. But that is why, as you say, it's such a seismic game for him. Let me read you out the big game record, because we'll put a graphic on the screen as well.
I can't wait.
Yeah, hold the table. Hearts, Rangers, Hearts 2, Rangers 1, Rangers 4, Hearts 2, Hearts 2, Rangers 1. That's 1 win out of 3 games. Celtic 3, Rangers 1. That was in the League Cup after extra time win. Celtic 1, Rangers 3. Rangers 0, Celtic 0, the game that Rangers lost on penalty in the Scottish Cup. And Rangers 2, Celtic 2, the draw in the league. Hibs, Rangers 1, Hibs 0 at Easter Road early in Danny Rohl's tenure. Rangers 1, Hibs 0. And then Hibs 0, Rangers 0. Falkirk, Rangers 0, Falkirk 0. That was, I think, 4 or 5 games into Rohl's tenure. The 6-3 win from a few weeks ago. And then Motherwell, 1-0 Rangers win just around Christmas time. The 1-1 draw in which Rangers conceded late. And the recent 2-3 loss. 6 wins out of 15, Stevie, is not great reading on the face of it. My quick analysis of this situation is this. Danny Rohl comes into a recovery job, and we can't forget that. It's different to Clement came into a situation where, Beale had just been sacked, but Rangers had won, I think, 4 games, 1-0 off the back of losing the Old Firm game. There was a core of the squad. It was a different situation. Okay, maybe much more money had been spent this time round, but I think it was a stronger squad. There was still a core there. There was it wasn't that long since a European final, right? So Danny Rohl inherits this really difficult situation. He goes into recovery mode. We remember, Bran, what that was like, the fracture between the relationship of the support and the club. Then it's about getting through games, like that Hibs game where Rangers score early and don't do much at all thereafter it. He's tried to add layers since. He's tried to add layers in the January window, I think, to transition Rangers from a more reactive team to a more proactive team. But I think in big games, and we'll speak about the 45-minute contrast as well and what that tells us, I think in big games, you've seen a lot of these teams, in particular Motherwell, Celtic and Hearts, who've basically got a stronger idea of what they are compared to Rangers, and that shows up. That's why Rangers have these 12 draws for me. They're not like a terrible team where they lose it, but they've just not quite got whether it's the final third patterns or the relationships or whatever it is, to go and win these games. And the 0-0 draw against Celtic in the Scottish Cup, where they lose it on penalties, in a way that typifies a season, because they kind of had control of a lot of the game, but they just can't quite win it, which is what is materialised in the league as well.
Yeah, sadly, that's spot on, isn't it? How cheery. The problem with that cup game is that Celtic more or less had their third strength team out.
Yeah.
And if you can't get over the line in that game, and you've got 2 Old Firm games back to back, and you can't go over the line in any of them, and you were 2-0 up, and let's be honest, at halftime had buried them, and then we see this seismic drop off that happens all the time. the gap between Rangers being very good and Rangers being ordinary is far too big.
Yeah.
And that's what causes, sometimes when teams are 2-0 up or 3-0 up or whatever, they'll just manage a game. We can't manage games.
Why do you think that is?
Because we're not good enough. We don't have the players and we don't have the experience to be able to manage a game. If you look at Arsenal the other night, who were 3-0 up against Fulham, I think at half time now, they need goals, but they're also balancing Champions League, which they go on to beat Atletico to go into the final. And they managed that second half brilliantly. Still creating chances, but knowing full well that, goal difference is a thing, but so is the Champions League. So the experience and just managing a game, they don't concede chances and they just dictate and control. We don't have anybody that get the ability to do that. And this is where I've got a problem with recruitment and what we do. And people will laugh at what I'm about to say. We've got 4 midfielders in Connor Barron, Tucci Chokwani, Nico Raskin and Mohamed Diamande. None of them can pass the ball in a way that's required to control a game.
You're still missing that number 6 profile.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have anybody that can break that line. We don't have anybody that can play. It's particularly frustrating because we don't create, and and I know that we don't create enough chances. So we go to 4-3-2-1 like we did at Tynecastle and control the game. But it's passive controlling. It's not. There's no intent there. There's nothing there. There's nothing that can suggest that we can go and kill this game off. And we score from a long throw. What we actually creating in that first 45?
It was the one Mikey Moore flashed across the face
of goal.
Apart from that,
Tav had a shot which blocked, which then took the long throw. We scored. We didn't create.
Do you not think that segueing slightly, but I think one of the negatives of so much chopping and changing, which was a positive at the start, but I think one of the negatives is there's not the relationships there. So then when you get into the final third, it still all feels quite spontaneous. Whereas I agree with you. I think when you have Hearts pinned back, and for a period of time in that first half, Rangers did have Hearts pinned back.
Did, yeah.
But their approach is so different to the week before against Motherwell that I just wonder if those runs, those relationships, those patterns just aren't there because there is so much changing week to week.
Can I take you back to Kilmarnock 5-1 victory?
Yes, you can. Happier times.
1-0 up at half time, they were booed off.
Yeah.
Because it was the exact same performance that we've seen at Tynecastle.
Yeah.
Slow, passive, controlling. There's nothing decisive there. There's no penetration. You're relying again on Mikey Moore creating. But there's no like passes or play. It's get the ball to him and see what you can do.
There's been an over-reliance on him, hasn't there?
Yeah, but that's why when Skov Olsen is so floundering so much, because when he gets the ball, he's looking around and going,
Agreed.
I don't have anything. What am I supposed to do? And I don't have the ability to go and do what Mikey Moore does, spontaneously take it past 2 or 3 players and create. And that's also why Mikey Moore's getting in so much problems and going down blind alleys, because he's playing almost with a panic of,
I need to do something.
I need to do this. And he's not thinking about what's best for the team and everything else, because his thought is just blind alley, down, run and go. And it goes back to what I was saying about the midfielders of having these 4, and they're all 4 very combative, very tough tackling, very busy players. Not one of them have got quality on the ball. Not one of them have got the ability to slow it down and to pick a pass and to manage a game and to be able to sit and go, right, we must be up 20 yards.
Yeah.
Because if you'll notice what happened at Tynecastle, and this is what bothers me a lot about when we go back to Danny Rohl, we go back to Rangers, and we go back to being 2-0 down at Celtic or 2-0 up at Celtic and things like that. It's simple changes that are changing the course of games. What did Derek McInnes do? He brought on Blair Spittle and went to 3 in midfield and went open man for man. And hard work beats talent. If talent doesn't work hard, if we're not working hard, Joshua, and you can see it when you go back to the week before. The Motherwell number 8, I can't remember his name.
Slattery.
Okay, yeah. Slattery. You watch their first goal and he burst past Nico Raskin, past Tochi Chokwani, and they're jogging back. Why is that allowed to happen? Why are we in a position where when Hearts score that second goal, there's 3 people to cross that in and none of them are bursting guts? Why are we not given the same effort? And it goes, and this is what troubles me. getting away from the point, which is not what I'm meaning to do. But there's so much to unpack from this that troubles me. Why aren't we busting our gut? Why aren't we killing ourselves to protect that 1-0 lead? Look at Hart's first goal. It hits the post. We're all standing watching.
Yeah.
Butland's flat-footed.
Yeah.
He doesn't get across his goals. Skov Olsen, who Tavernier had been pointing at to tell him, is looking at the sky. James Tavernier, flat-footed. Where's the leadership? Who's taking responsibility? And that then just look at what's happened before in games, in several games where we're not proactive. And you go back to the first half and being so passively in control, we're not able to lift it up again.
Yeah.
Why can't we react? Why can't we be in a situation where we go, Hearts are going to go man for man, but we're 1-0 up, going power on? We revert.
Yeah.
We dropped in 20 yards and they just pushed up 20 yards and we couldn't get out and we couldn't do anything. And there's such a lack of experience where a Barry Ferguson or a Kevin Thompson or a Stephen Davis would have just went, give me the ball for 10 minutes. And we would have managed it amongst the defence, pushed up, broke forward, got everybody back, not allowed them to pin us in. But we are so susceptible to being forced into another team's game. And you look at Motherwell away 1-0 up, when we're controlling that game and we're missing chances, and we revert to, we drop so far in, and we drop, then we go to 3 at the back, and we drop, and ultimately they score in the last minute. There's too many examples of us being pushed about on a football field with very little resistance.
Can I throw a theory to you?
And Monday was the same.
Right. What you just said there, basically you're saying too often Rangers play the game on the other team's terms.
Yes.
That is my almost.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's my founding Rangers belief. I'll tell you why. Why can't they change? So we've seen this pattern. I'll read out some here, Steve. You have 45 minutes where they're really weak and really strong, or really strong and really weak. So you think Falkirk away, Motherwell at home. This is all in the last 2-3 weeks. Hearts away, even Hearts at home in the 4-2 win. I just wonder whether Rangers have got into a bit of a habit as a squad, because of this leadership question, of relying on Danny Rohl to change things. And that's come undone a little bit because they don't have... Claudio Braga was speaking, I was at the game on Monday, and he was speaking after the game. And he made a comment where he effectively said, we know we're not like a tiki-taka team, but we know who we are. Hearts have a really clear identity. And it might not always play out in patterns of play, but there's relationships on the pitch. Braga and Shankland, their midfielders, a rough general formation, right? Celtic have this. Players who've won it before, they still have the kind of muscle memory of recent managers. Rangers in the last 5 years have changed so often, have changed personnel, idea, manager, style. They've transitioned from Russell Martin football to Red Bull football in the same season. I just think when you get to high-stress moments in games too often, there is not that core to fall back on. In a way that under Gerrard, you had that shape to fall back into. We'll survive these next 15, 20-minute games. I think when you combine that with the obvious need of a new core to build around, a centre-half, a central midfielder, a couple of relationships, a goalkeeper, that's why you get these issues where it seems like they can't manage games, because they can't manage games.
No, I agree. I would also throw another point to you. Is there a case to say that we only look dangerous and we only look like we're on the front foot of games when we play with an urgency that comes through panic? I'll tell you an example, being
Motherwell second half.
Motherwell second half being 2-0 down. Livingston being 2-0 down.
Yeah. Celtic away.
Yeah.
Hearts at home.
Right.
But
these are big wins for us.
Yeah.
Or draws, as it turns out to be. But here's the thing. Easter Road 0-0, right? We can't change the pattern of play. We can't change our tempo. We can't. And you look at the last minute, I think Bayrami goes in on the right-hand side. He's cutting it back to nobody because we're still playing with that second tempo.
Why do you think that is? Because I think that the core issue of that is Rangers still, they can't set the tempo at the start of games unless they play that 4-2-2, which worked in the early minutes against Celtic, but that's so reliant on the Deary and Romans being there. I think they're still a team that when, this is an age-old issue, when the opposition sit in, they can't really create space because they can't play through a press.
But the problem with that is teams aren't sitting in anymore. And we're still not able. Teams are actually dictating on to us, and we're like...
But then they're isolating Butland's passing, which is what Hearts did, because they know that that's not going to hurt them in the same way. But the basic thinking there is like Motherwell's one example. But I think, or Hearts, I still think that they are better, as you identify there, at forcing the game to be played on their terms than Rangers are. And when you've lost Romans and Nadiri, Romans has been the biggest missing in an attacking sense. He was Rangers' most creative player when he came in January.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
he's also vital for the press as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you lose those two players, that's what you see in the game against Motherwell, where Rangers basically try and do that. And I think that's why the midfield looks so lethargic and bad for that first goal. I don't think it's that they're not trying. I think it's that they're being so caught in the opening 20 minutes between pressing up, jumping back, 4v2. And you effectively can't play like that without those two players, Romans and Nadiri, which then comes down to, is that a mistake from Rohl, which I think on the day it probably was. And he was getting these decisions right when he came in, but it's fine margins, isn't it? Because it's title race.
It should be fine margins, but it's also not, because he should be learning from. We know the drop off from two Romans to Jada Makoma is pretty extensive. Makoma's a young guy. He's done okay. He's not two Romans.
No.
The problem Rangers have with two Romans is he as reliable as Dujon Sterling? Are we falling into the same trap where we've got a really good player, but he's the same as the guy on the other side who just can only play 2-3 games? That's my worry now with two Romans. I think when you don't have that and you still play right, see, for example, that formation of 4-2-2-2, the most important positions in that is not your two in midfield, it's not your two up front, it's your two behind and in front of the midfield. And when you play with two passive players like Gassama or Asgard, it all falls apart because they don't press, they don't push. And then you've got Yusuf Chermiti up front who doesn't do that either. It all begins to fall apart and teams can find their way out. Now, if you look at that Motherwell game, all it took for Motherwell was to sit the boy in at 6. Elliot Watt, who's
very good.
Who you would have seen me say about 6 months in this podcast, Rangers should be watching him.
And I think they are, and I would like to see, but I think a lot of other teams are watching them as well.
Absolutely it is. But here's how simple it was. Sit him in a 6, because when you've got those two, they're passive, right? They're not aggressively pushing on. So Nadiri would stop that space.
Yeah.
They don't.
Which is what happens at early example.
Yeah, but what happened against Motherwell was they went goalkeeper 6 wide. And because our 2-2s were filling space, they just completely were negated from the game. And all of a sudden, it took 2 passes for Motherwell to be on top of us. And that happened, Joshua, 3-4 times in the first half.
What else do Motherwell have there? The goalkeeper. To be an extra man in possession, which I think is another...
Of course it is. So we go back to the Butland thing. But I'm more talking about Danny Rohl and mistakes he's making.
Yeah.
You go to the Hearts game, the decision to play Skov Olsen after being out for 2 games.
Out for a month. He'd only played 45 minutes in the last month when he was hooked against Dundee United at half-time.
Okay, so why, Danny? What is wrong with Oliver Antman, who came in flying, assisting, has still got a very good record on actual minutes played, and he's not getting a look in? He's our player. Why are we going with a guy who, for all extensive purposes, in such a massive game, hasn't shown any glimpses of form apart from an assist here or there? That's a big decision.
Yeah.
And it's a big decision that is easily unpicked. And you know he's not bursting a gut. You know he's not taking you on. You know he's not tracking you back. You can almost isolate that whole right-hand side. And it's things like that Danny Rohl in the setups has got wrong. Especially when your midfield is so samey. When your midfield is Chukwani, Diamandi and Raskin. I think that's criminal of those 3 in that second half to be bullied the way they were. And they weren't even bullied. I made this point to you on social media that it's not... Do you remember Hearts having to bite into challenges to have to really
it wasn't
win the battle?
Yeah.
No, they didn't need to win the battle. They just needed to control the ball. And our guys were miles off it. And I just think that Rowe has got too many small things wrong that have created a massive issue for a team that's maybe missing key characteristics throughout it, where little tiny mistakes make massive problems.
Yeah.
And he hasn't rectified, and he hasn't learned from it either. The 4-2-2-2 thing, where it looks electric at times, at others, it looks lethargic when he doesn't get the personnel right.
Yeah, ceiling on the floor. And that's, it's remember him speaking about this in the press conference after Motherwell, where he effectively said what I'm sure his argument would be that his team didn't follow out the instructions in the first half, right? But it's the centre halves didn't follow up. They didn't press man for man. But effectively, Motherwell were better at their game than Rangers were at their game, and two kind of ideals clashing. And these are the small decisions that managers live or die on. It's as you say, can you beat a vulnerable Celtic in either cup competition? And when you don't, you leave yourself open and vulnerable to a lot of criticism. And it's why tomorrow's setup, which we'll maybe speak about briefly before we close, is interesting. I think you will continue to see Rangers play that kind of 4-3-3 they did in the first half against Hearts. I can't see them playing two strikers. Maybe Nadiri's fit. You'd like to think that Romans will be back. So maybe the changes are Sterling to right back, Romans to left back, and I think Connor Barron has to come into that midfield. Any other alterations for you? So the right wing as well. So maybe a start for Oliver Antman or Gassama.
Here's the issue.
Just one.
Here's the issue. If we go 4-3-3, Chermiti can't start as 9. Because if you don't get the proper people up around him, his pressing game is not good enough to be a one when the two wingers don't back him up either. He's literally, so you're easy played around him. If you go back to the Celtic game before when it was Nadiri and Chermiti and they came off, they found an out ball every time in the cup game and they dictated because they were easy passes to McGregor every single time, who then spun and our midfield dropped off and they were on us every single time. I don't think we can afford to go and play 4-3-3 at Park.
So would you start Nadiri and Chermiti?
Yes. I think you have to, midfield, but Nadiri sits as a 10.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm taking Chukwani out of there. I think Connor Barron has to play.
Yeah.
I think Chukwani, as much as he's powerful, has really dropped off in the last 2 or 3 weeks. He was exposed against Motherwell. He made mistakes at Livingston. He made mistakes against Hearts.
Aberdeen.
So I'm bringing in Connor Barron. And I'm going with Nico Raskin, but I'll be honest with you, Joshua, Nico Raskin's been off it as well. He badly faded against Hearts in a game where I need him to dominate. It's all right doing it at Falkirk, mate. You need big games need to be dominating. Wings is an issue. Mikey Moore starts and then give me a coin and I'll flip it to see who starts on the right. Because it's probably, in my eyes...
Diamande? Starting Diamande?
No.
See, I think I would, because I think he's... My question is...
I think he flatters to deceive. And that's my issue with the 4 of them. Yeah. They all do it. They all flatter to deceive.
Yeah.
And the only one that's been positive, and it was Rangers were in such a good run of form, was Connor Barron, who got injured, and then he's been completely bombed out. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
So all of them, Raskin, Chukwani, Diamande, have all flattered to deceive. They've all had good moments. But anyway, it's literally... That's the question about the team, or the problem with the team. It's too busy. There's too many flip of the coins.
Yeah, there's not enough guarantees, which is why you need the core built this summer, right?
What do you do in that right hand side tomorrow?
This is a working theory. This is a live theory. Okay, I agree with you about Nadiri. I think you want physical presence, and there was a moment in the first half. Obviously, the press box is right behind Danny Rohl, so it was interesting to watch him at Tynecastle. There's a moment where Chermiti wins a flick on, and no one's there to pick up the second ball, and he was going mad. That's not necessarily Mikey Moore's game or a winger's game. That's Nadiri's game. What about if you go a 4-3-3, but it's narrow? You need to... Celtic, you probably want to let them dominate the ball, because I don't think Rangers are at their best when they have 60% possession in a game like this. Personally, I would start Diamande. I agree he flatters to deceive at points, but I think he's the one who can take the ball in the midfield in the half turn. So I'm going Romans at left back, Sterling at right back, and your 2 centre halves. I'm going a midfield 3 of Barron, Raskin and Diamande, and I'm going a narrow 3 of Moore, Nadiri and Chermiti, which leaves you without much width. You need that from your fullbacks, but it gives you control of the centre. It gives you someone to win second balls, and I don't think anyone has been good enough on the right to think that we need to necessarily stick with that formation. That's my team.
Can I just make a point on Diamande?
Please.
And they only want to make this point. Diamande is as much a flip of the coin as Raskin or Chukwani or Barron. You summed it up nicely by saying you don't have enough guarantees. Yeah. That's what the point I'm trying to make is. None of them have been 8 out of 10s. They've all sometimes been 7 or sometimes mostly been 5 or 6s. That's the biggest issue. I've not got a problem with your team. Would I then have Moore floating about so that he could, when we're attacking on the right, I would expect Moore to be down there, attacking on the left, I'd expect Moore to be there. It's a lot to ask of him. But you could also then bring on Gassama after 60, 70 minutes and hope. Gassama comes on at times and looks amazing and then comes on at others and looks absent. Like he hates it. Yeah. And I just have real issues with individuals in our team. And I suppose that lack of guarantee goes back to, the age-old question from Danny Rohl. As much as he's making mistakes, how much is it on the players as well? We do need 6 players.
Yeah. And I guess that might be his argument might be you look at Shankland and Braga, or I don't know, McGregor and Tierney, you look at the players his rivals have, and he might turn around and say, well, I think Chermiti could be that next season, or I think Fernandes could be that, has been that at points. But and Moore maybe has been the closest thing to that for Rangers, but he's also an 18-year-old playing the most football he's ever played in his career. So I think we sometimes can be guilty of thinking of the manager as a chess player at the side of the pitch. They move them here, they move them here, they move them here. If you take what Danny Rohl says in that press conference, he didn't tell Rangers to drop back. He told them to keep playing aggressively, but they didn't. So whose fault was that? Because we can get into the habit, I think, of blaming managers for individual errors.
No, absolutely not. It goes back to midfield though, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you need a core. What we're both in agreement with is you need a core of 4 or 5 players, I would say, who it's not so much about what system we're playing or what the state of the game is. They just give you 7 out of 10.
Do you know the problem? Season. Do you know the problem is? See, up until Motherwell, we had 8 players out of that 11 in form. No bother at all. Why is it such a criminal drop off so easily? Why are we so easy to play against? Why is it so easy to turn around 1-0 deficits or 2-0 deficits with very little resistance from Rangers? I need to know why that's happening. Why is Andy Halliday sitting on a couch dissecting Danny Rohl and saying we all know as players how to play against this and we know what to do, etc., because Rangers are weak? And that to me it's got to stop. I know what you come into, right? And I'm not blind to it. Here's the other issue. Danny Rohl loses tomorrow and Rangers do finish third and we finished 10 points behind Hearts, 7 behind, or even worse, whatever. People are going to say, well, it was 13 when he came in. He's made very little difference. We're out of 2 cups because of him. Both times to a very poor Celtic side. And they're also going to say, why delay what's going to happen in October? They're going to say, go and get Steven Gerrard, go and get Kevin Muscat, go and get somebody now, give them the summer and redo things. So there's no point in avoiding that. That's going to come for us as in this position in what we do, and the fan base are going to push it. So I'll be honest with you. Do you know, in an ideal situation, we'll be absolutely rotten in the first half tomorrow and it'll go in 0-0. Because then you're counting on the fact that the second half will turn up.
Which is why I think if you play 3 midfielders as well and you could just congest the game a bit. Rangers don't win games in the first. What's a game this season that Rangers have won in the first half? Dundee away.
2-0 up, weren't they?
Yeah, 2-0 up. But you think of the big games, Hearts, you think of Celtic at Parkhead.
Even Aberdeen at Pittodrie, where they were very much in charge, it's still 1-0 to James Tavernier gets a late penalty and stuff. So I agree.
Dundee United at home recently, Aberdeen at home recently.
Yeah, 2-1s and stuff like that.
Let's see how we go. There's going to be plenty of time to talk over the summer here on the Rangers Review, so stay with us. Thanks for joining our Saturday show Talking Point crossover.
Do you know what the most disappointing thing about this podcast is?
Yes.
There's not any solutions to what we're talking about. There's so many questions. There's so many. I'm coming away from this not feeling a bit more positive. I'm just feeling, why is there so many questions about this team? That's what's so disappointing for me. I hope people enjoyed watching it. I hope people understand it. And we don't want to be negative. You don't want to sit here. I really hope we turn up tomorrow and go and win 3-0. Stop Celtic winning the league, finish second. That would be just wonderful.
But the time for positivity is if they do that.
If they give us it.
Yeah.
When they show us positivity, it was only 2-3 weeks ago at the live show I thought we'd win this league. And I really did. And I was so positive. It was manifesting, trying to get behind them. Can't follow up with 2 really damaging defeats and then expect us to sit here and go, everything's wonderful. There needs to be a bit of realism, but that's life at Rangers. Look at it. 2 games ago, we were winning this league. Now we're not. And now we're looking at the manager saying, can he really stay this summer?
Yep. This is the Rangers cycle. We're going to be across it as ever. You can join us at live pre and post match tomorrow, ahead and after that huge Old Firm game. Until then, thanks to Stevie for joining me. Please hit the notification bell, subscribe to the Rangers Review, still £12 for 12 months. That's only £1 every month for the best Rangers journalism. We'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye for now.